I highly recommend people just scroll through this. The pictures of the closets are incredible. The amount of full white on white outfits that Yoenis seems to have in his closet, in his walk-in, is just stupendous.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a place, and I don't think this is the one. Hello and welcome to Baseball Barbacast, the only baseball podcast in the world legitimately interested in buying Yoenis Cespedes' house. I'm Jake Mintz. That's Jordan Shusterman. And the mortgage calculator on here says we got to put $6 million down. So we just need to find $505,999,990. We can do 10. So crowdfund it. Go fund us.
Interested and capable are two very different things. I know you are still in the renting stage of your life as someone who did just buy a home and learned all about mortgages. This is not a number I am comfortable with, but we are going to talk later about Yo's house, which is on the market. But we have a lot else to get to, including a special guest, Jacob Wilson of the A's. Oh my goodness, what a season. We're going to talk to him a little bit later. But before we get to all that, we have to talk about dingers. It is our opener.
Our first home run derby participant has been announced, and it could not be better than this. Ronald Acuña Jr. of the Atlanta Braves is going to be in the home run derby. He will be the hometown participant. The All-Star Game and the Derby, all the festivities this year are in Atlanta. And Acuña, who has only been back on the field healthy and playing for a month or so after recovering from his second ACL tear, is going to be in the home run derby. Initial reactions, Jordan Shusterman.
This is fantastic, obviously. I think a few things on Acuña. So the first thing is that I am so grateful that he is looking this good. And maybe there was a world where he came back and was like still kind of settling in and said he was doing the derby, and we would be very excited. But if he still kind of looked tentative from the injury, we'd be like, oh, like, is this a good idea? Do we want to get hurt? It's like, no. This is Ronald Acuña, who seems to just be back at his full best, at least swinging the bat. We know maybe, the speed and stuff will still take some time to get back into his game. But if we just want to see Ronald hit a bunch of dingers, this should be fantastic. And it's also important to note that this will be Ronald's third time participating in the Derby. He first did it in 2019 in Cleveland. And what I remember so much about his first Derby appearance was he was the only guy going oppo, or at least, I think we got a little bit of Pete. Sometimes Pete goes oppo, but the low line drives to right center field that Ronald Acuña was hitting in the Derby when so many of the guys are just trying to pull it directly down the line was very different. He also participated in 2022 and lost in the first round to Pete Alonso in Los Angeles. So Ronald does have some experience in this event, and I have to imagine doing it at home will give him a little bit of extra motivation to come out on top.
Now, Ronald has crazy juice, that's for sure. But it's not necessarily the type of power that is always conducive in winning the Derby because it's a lot more bat speed oriented. He can rev the engine up in a way that not many players can. But when you have to rev that engine again and again and again and again, it starts to wear on you. And I just think about when Aaron Judge won the Derby in Miami, the only time he did it, where he was swinging at like 75%. And the ball was just carrying out every time because he's enormous and strong. I'm not trying to throw water onto this delightful fire. I'm just trying to, provide some context that Acuña is not going to be the favorite, in my opinion. Now, having a hometown dude is always great. Last year, we had Adolis did the Derby, if I remember correctly, in Texas.
Yep.
Last year's Derby was kind of a dud. I consider myself something of a Derby aficionado. I love this event. It is the only night on the baseball calendar that is not hyper optimized towards winning baseball games. And I think that is a nice emotional reprieve. However, last year, you got to admit, it was blah. Now, I don't think it is a sign of a trend like the NBA slam dunk contest, which has kind of sucked over the last 5 years. I think the Derby is fine. I like the current format. And I'm excited for this year's version in 110-degree heat in Atlanta outside. Now, with Acuña being the only person confirmed, we thought it would be a good time to reveal who we want to be in the Derby. Jordan and I have each prepared a list of 7 additional participants. Remember, there are 8 hitters in the Derby. We have not seen the other person's list. We have removed 3 names from our ideal teams. That is Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, and Pete Crow Armstrong. Judge and Crow Armstrong have both already said that they are not going to do it this year. So while it would be nice to have them in there, they'd be great for very different reasons. They will not be doing it. Ohtani, who did it once in 2021 in Colorado, and wow, it was great to be there for that. I would be floored if he ever does it again. If the Dodgers ever allow him to do it again, which is a bummer. He has not publicly said that he's out this year, but it feels almost impossible.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule out Ohtani. I wouldn't say he's never going to do it again because I still think Shohei kind of runs the show. And if some year he decides to do it, then maybe he'll do it. But we are moving Ohtani and Judge to the side. And forgive us if any of these guys we put on our teams have said definitively they don't want to do it. I know there are some that have said that they would do it. So we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll just say before we get to my team is yeah, like the Derby is 2 weeks from Monday. And the way that they've announced it over these last few years is that it just kind of trickles out. And it's often that we don't even get the last handful of participants until, 3 or 4 days before the Derby. And this is honestly pretty early to even start to get, our first one, but it's not surprising that they get Acuña confirmed as the kind of host Derby participant. And I think you're underselling Ronald a little bit. I mean, he ran into some tough opponents in his previous two runs, but I think, we'll see where the field ends up being, but I think he is going to end up showing quite well here. So we'll see how it goes. And you didn't even mention, right? Teoscar Hernandez wins last year, and that's part of why he's, that's not as fun as it could be with some of these other guys. But we'll see if Teoscar makes either of our lists. Maybe it's disrespectful because he's having another great season. But let's get to it. All right, Jake. So again, I have prepared 7 names. This is very hard. I had like an initial list of like 15. We could talk about our honorable mentions after. But let's get to my team. My dream home run derby field. Here are my additional 7. All right. So we've got Ronald. The first one, obviously, it's Cal Raleigh. I mean, come on. Let's not overthink this. The most exciting thing about this is that Cal has said he wants to do it. And if they ask him, it's go time. So assuming the Mariners do not, jump in front of this, I expect Big Dumper and his ridiculous number of home runs to be in the Derby. My third pick is going to be Junior Caminero. I've already talked about him as someone I want to see in the Derby. He continues to have an incredible season as one of the youngest players in Major League Baseball. I believe he just hit his 20th home run. Again, it's kind of like Ronald in the bat speed element, but I think if you're looking for a young ascendant player that more people should know about who would love to perform in a Derby setting, I think Caminero is a no-brainer. James Wood is another one who kind of fits into that, but he is far less the showman that Junior Caminero is. But I do also think that James Wood has shown this year that he is capable of pulling the baseball very, very, very far. So while I know his approach does take him the other way, and he's not necessarily one to give us Derby kind of style home runs very often, it's in there, and I love James Wood too much. He was a very tough one to know whether to include or not, but I'm going to go with James Wood. Elly De La Cruz. This is not that complicated. I know Elly isn't having as good of a season as we would have hoped, but he's Elly, and he can hit the ball 115 from both sides of the plate. I would love to see him, as we like to joke, switch plates, as ESPN said when Adley Rutschman was in the Derby, and someone on the ESPN social account tweeted, "Adley switched plates." It's like, that's not really what happened, but that's fine. So
welcome to the world of baseball. Social media person.
Yeah, so that would be great. I'm so glad they're broadcasting that. Anyway, and I love Elly. I don't think I have to explain that too much. Eugenio Suarez is an interesting pick here. Now, on one hand, he's got over 300 career home runs. He has never participated in the Derby in Major League Baseball, but He
Yep.
won the Venezuelan League Home Run Derby over the offseason, and he's having a great season, and everybody loves Gino, and he deserves to be there as an all-star, and I wanted a little bit more veteran presence here, and he was my pick in that regard. Pete Alonso is going to be a discussion here on its own, so I'm just going to move past Pete Alonso. I expect him to do it. I think this will be his 6th straight time. I expect him to do it, and I want Pete to do it because he's the Derby guy. So I don't think I need to explain that, but if we need to go into Pete further, we can. And then I'm picking Rafael Devers. Now, I think this is probably the least likely one of all of these. However, I think it would fit with the theme of the season, which is Rafael Devers. And I think it would fit with the theme of Rafael Devers maybe doing things now that he didn't before. And I think that he is one of my favorite hitters to watch and obviously has, ridiculous power and would just be an absolute treat. So I think that's the most optimistic pick here of all of these. But I also have to include it because if it is totally up to me, Rafael Devers needs to remain a main character, and this would be a perfect way for him to do that. So there is my dream 8 Derby. Again, so many other great contenders which we can get to, and I look forward to seeing who is on your team. How do you feel before we get to your team? How are you feeling about mine?
Well, if I respond to that, I think it might give some hints on my team, so I'm not going to say that. Before I reveal my 8, I like your 8. Good 8. Strong 8. Okay. How many of your additional 7 do you think I picked?
I would set the over under at 3.5, and I'd probably go slight under on that. I think it's probably going to be about 3. I think you're more likely to go farther off the board, but I'm looking forward to seeing it.
George Shusterman, you are very incorrect. You and I are similar people with similar worldviews, and I believe that we have 5 of the same choices on our Derby field. So let's go ahead and fly through my picks. Cal Raleigh is a layup and a half. Cal Raleigh has said that he wants to do it. If he is asked, I thought it was adorable. They were like, hey, Cal, would you do the Derby? And he was like, if they ask me, it's like, hey, buddy, you're leading the league in home runs and you're a switch hitting catcher and you're going to be at the All-Star game. I think they're probably going to ask you to do it.
He can switch Cal plates Raleigh, too.
He can switch those plates. I think Cal Raleigh is essentially a lock. The only way he doesn't do it is if Jerry DiPoto, Seattle Mariners GM Jerry DiPoto tackles him and is like, you're not allowed to do this because we need you. James Wood, also a layup. James Wood was asked, I believe, by Spencer Nussbaum of the Washington Post if he would do the Derby. And in hilarious James Wood fashion, he'd be like, yeah, I haven't really thought about that. And I would totally do it if they asked me. But yeah, we'll see. I love James Wood. I absolutely adore James Wood and his there's low heartbeat and then there's no heartbeat, and that's James Wood. Just to keep going through the ones you also picked, Juno Suarez, I also went back and watched some of the highlights from his Venezuelan Winter League Home Run Derby victory. That's a no-brainer to me. He is a delightful and underrated personality in our sport. And I think that is because he has never been on a big team. He has been on the Reds, the Mariners, and the Diamondbacks. I think that if he ends up on a huge market team, he will become something of a fan favorite in the way that he has in those smaller markets. But he is just so affable, so personable, enjoyable to be around. And I think that will really come through in a Derby setting. Elly De La Cruz, switch hitter, switch plates, 116 off the bat, like you said. Freaking duh. He's been a little bit more resistant to it. I don't think he will do it. He wants to be in the midst of a MVP type season, I think, before he agrees to do the Derby. And then Pete Alonso is the Derby guy. You know how, what's that guy's name? Jeff Ross, who does all the roasts. And whenever there's a roast, it's the roast of Adam Sandler. And it's all the people who know Adam Sandler. And then this guy, Jeff Ross, who just does roasts. That's his bit. That is the Derby. Pete is the Derby version of that. And so
Yeah.
he should be in the Derby every year until he retires and 5 years after that. Okay, the two that I have that you don't have are Michael Nelson Trout and Kyle, middle name Schwarber. I'll start with Schwarber. So Schwarber has done it before. People think he was robbed against Bryce in 2018. Cubs fans still fuming over that. I just think that Schwarber's power is a true 80. And I think his type of power will play in the Derby as it has before. He's been competitive in the past. I think we need another villain in Atlanta. Pete will get booed. And I think that Schwarber will also get booed. But having one of those two guys go up against Ronald would be great theater. And I think adding an additional NL East foe. I know James Wood is NL East too, but Braves fans hardly know the guy yet. I just think having a Schwarber Acuña matchup would be really good. And like, who doesn't love a Schwarbomb? And then Mike Trout. Mike Trout has never done the Derby. I think it's unrealistic to expect him to do the Derby, given where his body is at right now. However, Trout being a Derbyless man is akin to LeBron never doing the dunk contest. And I would like for Trout to make that leap before LaFraud. Just kidding. We're LeBron people. Before LeBron does it over in the NBA. And I think that Trout will do it next year in Philly when he goes home.
Oh, wow.
I do. Yeah. As a member of the Phillies when he gets traded there this offseason. And so that's my 8. Acuña, Raleigh, Wood, Trout, Suarez, Schwarber, De La Cruz, and Pete Alonso.
All right. So a couple thoughts here. Quickly on Schwarber. Yes, his performance in 2018 was very special. Loses in the finals to Bryce Harper. Everyone's mad because Bryce Harper was, getting his pitches too quickly, whatever. I have to knock Schwarber a little bit because he also participated in 2022 as the 1 seed and lost to old man Albert Pujols, which was a great moment, I will say. I mean, that was a hilarious thing to happen and be in the building for. But come on, Kyle Schwarber, you go in as the 1 seed and you lose to Pujols. What are we doing? Anyway, I love Schwarber. I would have no problem with him being in it, but I wanted to kind of adjust for more fresh blood here. As for Trout, I had the absolute privilege of telling Cleveland press box dear friend Zach Meisel yesterday, hey, why don't you open up Mike Trout's Baseball Savant page? And I would encourage everyone to go take a look at Mike Trout, who surely is not having anywhere close to the season that he is used to having. But if we're talking about Mike Trout, and we're talking again as we open this conversation up to some other honorable mentions, and now you get to see and hear Jake's reaction to this, is that yes, he's hitting 230. Yeah. Yes, he is not the player that he used to be. He is not a center fielder. But Mike Trout is still hitting the absolute daylights out of the baseball. He can still hit it harder and in the air, basically as well as anybody else. Remember the home run he hit in Miami last year before he got injured again? Like, he can still do this. This is not just, because you make that LeBron comparison, and LeBron is still an absolute freak. But we missed the chance of the best version of LeBron in the dunk contest. If he does it now, it'll be more like Pujols doing the Derby at age 39 or 40 or whatever, where it's like, this is amazing that he can still do this and compete, but this is not the same level of athlete. You could still sort of say that about Trout, but at the same time, man,
you're right.
He would still go in there and he would be hitting it just as hard and far as basically anybody else. And so that is why I think Trout was I ended up picking James Wood over him because I had a feeling you would pick Trout and we talk about it anyway. But it feels unrealistic for him to do it for all the obvious reasons. But yeah, he is the one who we have not seen yet do it of these top stars, right? Because the other categories that we didn't include, guys that we've seen do it before who would be fun to watch again, Soto, Vlad Jr., Julio, like, there are other Bryce Harper, right? Like, these are guys we would love to see in the Derby. I'm generally inclined to come up with some new names, but Trout's the one that we haven't, and I just, I hope so. So who are some other names to stand out? Who else were you considering that we maybe haven't mentioned yet?
So the two guys that you had, Devers and Caminero, were also on my extended board. The two that just missed for me were Ryan O'Hearn, who has already said that he wants to do it, and I think would just be like, the Derby needs one guy every year where you look back in 5 years and you're like, that guy did the Derby? And so I thought about putting him in there to fill that role over Kyle Schwarber. He's having an awesome season. He's going to be an all-star. The other one is Jazz. Just the jazzdom of Jazz is so perfect for this type of event. And we have seen Jazz participate in a home run derby before, the one he does in the Bahamas where they hit the balls into the ocean. We have been twice. It is awesome. I think that Jazz statistically is having a good enough season where he could do it. He just missed too much time and is probably not going to be an all-star as a result. Also, he like switched positions in the middle of the season. But yeah, Jazz, the vibe of Jazz in the derby is perfect. Other guys on my board, Javi Baez, Byron Buxton, Ketel Marte, and Seiya Suzuki.
Yeah, no, those are all very good picks. I think the closest comp for O'Hearn would be Justin Bour. Now in 2017, that was a little bit different because it was in Miami, and so Bour happened to be the Marlin that was doing it in addition to Stanton, right?
He gave a great all-time moment. He showed up with the donuts, remember?
Yeah, and that was awesome because Stanton was the 1 seed who was still a Marlin at that point, amidst his MVP season. But Bour still got to do it, and yeah, he was hit. He was eating in between home runs, which was great. And he actually lost. He put up a fight against Judge in the first round. It was him against Judge in the first round, and it was actually pretty close. So yeah, O'Hearn will be great. I mean, he has a good chance of being the Orioles representative anyway. So I think he would be a fun underdog. But again, it's just the Braves fans would be like, literally, who is this person? It would be a pretty epic level of anonymity, but that's fine. I mean, I think in some ways that makes it better. Other guys to just rattle off here before we get to our conversation with Jacob Wilson. Speaking of Jacob Wilson, Lawrence Butler, again, it seems like, and Nick Kurtz, I should say. Now, I think Kurtz is another one who we could see at some point in terms of, just raw power and someone, Jack Caglione also at some point. I'm sure we will see him in the Derby. Definitely too early there. And then 3 others who Suzuki I had on here. Andy Pages would be a fun one. But the 3 ones that you did not mention, who I definitely wanted to give some love to and didn't pick for one reason or another. But also Bobby Witt Jr., that was one of the highlights of last year, but Bobby Witt's amazing. He's just, I don't know. I mean, he put on a show last year. He was kind of at home and that was cool, but he's still not one of my first picks here. But so the 3 last names I would mention are, if we're just going, who's going to hit the ball the farthest? I mean, it's Oneil Cruz, right? I know he has been disappointing in a lot of other respects, as you fairly pointed out on Twitter earlier this week. And also, by the way, this is another reason you talked about how he has 1 homer this month. Great. Let's remind him how to hit home runs. Let's tell Oneil Cruz to go out there and hit it as far and hard as he can. That would be wonderful. And then the 2 others, one of which I think we will see down the road, and it just isn't having a good enough season, is Wyatt Langford. And then the last one who I think has a real chance to being added is Joe Adell. I think Joe Adell also fits. He's hit enough home runs. He's got pretty impressive power. Is he an all-star? No, but he's someone that I think I could see qualifying in. I mean, he's of course past prospectum in the way that even Junior Caminero, some of these younger guys are, but he's still in that kind of younger group of guys that I think MLB would happily highlight, and I think would be deserving and would probably put on a show. So Joe Adell is the last one to mention there. But those are our squads. I'm pretty happy with it. I think I shouldn't be that surprised we were aligned. We've been doing this for a while together.
That is true. From the home run derby to someone who is probably not going to be in the home run derby, Jacob Wilson, starting shortstop for the Athletics of Yolo County, joined us on the show. We recorded this earlier this week, and Jacob Wilson, they just finished the first round of All-Star voting, and Jacob Wilson got more votes than Bobby Witt Jr. And I think that is a fascinating thing because Bobby Witt Jr.'s name value nationally is way beyond what Jacob Wilson is right now, understandably. But Jacob Wilson beat Bobby Witt Jr., I think, by 200,000 votes without a fan base kind of attached to him, respectfully. And I think that's fascinating. Now, part of it is because his batting average is so high. And when you go in and you vote, it just says the batting average. And so it's like, oh, Jacob Wilson, this guy's hitting 360. Like, yeah, I'll vote for him, no doubt. But I also think it's just because his style of baseball has crossed over in a really cool way. We talked to Jacob about that and about a bunch of other things. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Thank you to Jacob Wilson for joining us, and we will be right back with that chat.
Welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. We are now thrilled to be joined by a very special guest. He is having a pretty decent season. His name is Jacob Wilson of the A's. Jacob, welcome to Baseball Barbacast.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
So there are a lot of different places we could begin with you. You're having, like Jordan said, a phenomenal rookie season, a very unique rookie season. I want to begin with your stance. I know you get a lot of questions about this. You're pretty active in the batter's box. I went back and looked at some video of you from the Northwoods from college, and it seems like you've gotten almost noisier over time. Can you kind of explain how that's been the case?
Yeah, I've kind of always been that twitchy athlete ever since I was a kid. I've always kind of been moving the box ever since I was, very young. That's kind of something my dad always taught me. I kind of learned that the more movement I had, it was better for me in the box, face these pitches. I was never a good athlete that could just stand still and be explosive. I always had to like kind of move in rhythm and being it's all kind of timing based, rhythm goes into the timing and then timing goes into the swing. And it's not something I've always been doing, like I said, since I was a kid. And, as you kind of develop and go from high school to college to pro ball, the pitches just keep getting better and better. So I think that, over time, it always kind of started to get a little bit faster and faster because I kind of just had to, be more in rhythm to face these guys on a daily basis. So I think it's gotten faster and it's always just been a twitchy swing.
And are you doing drill work with that type of movement? Like when you do tee stuff or you do flips?
It's still twitchy, but it's not as fast. When I'm in the cage, like it's kind of just feeling out the swing and feeling out the stance. But in game is definitely when it's at its fastest for sure.
I think what I'm curious about, you mentioned that development and the pitchers getting better and better, and that may be impacting your move in the box. I'm also curious about kind of the timing of your development because your high school senior year was 2020, and that, of course, I'm sure complicated things as you transition into college and not having maybe that full senior season. But, the strikeouts and that's it. Oh, he hasn't struck out and all these things. Like that seems to have only gotten better as you've gone up different levels. You struck out more than you walked as a freshman at Grand Canyon, but then obviously since then it has been a lot more extreme towards making as much contact as basically anyone else in baseball. Yeah. So when did you kind of realize you had that knack of putting the bat on the ball?
Yeah, it definitely goes back to kind of high school. I definitely never liked striking out. That's just something my dad built into me. He didn't like striking out, so for me, it was always, put the ball in play, good things can happen. Defense makes an error, or it's like a 2-strike swinging bunt, whatever happens. But, any way to find a way on base was kind of my dad's main kind of lesson to me growing up, was just put the ball in play and, good things can happen for your team. So going into my freshman year, obviously, like you said, struck out a little bit more than I wanted to. And kind of really worked on a 2-strike approach that year. I think in high school, you don't really have to have a crazy 2-strike approach because you're not really facing too many arms that are crazy overpowering. But once you get to college, it starts getting a little bit harder. So after my freshman year, I really built in a 2-strike approach and just kind of building the mentality of like, I'm going to go out there and this guy's not striking me out. I'm going to do whatever I can for this guy not to strike me out, fouling off his best pitches and just waiting for them to make a mistake. So, for me, it's always been kind of a mindset and on top of an approach-based 2-strike thing to really just put the ball in play. And, like I said, that's kind of the main lesson my dad taught me growing up: put the ball in play and good things can happen.
So you say that growing up, you didn't like to strike out. Do your strikeouts, because you have so few of them, stick in your brain? Like I went back and watched today the 5 strikeouts you had your junior year. Do you remember those moments almost as much as you remember the doubles and the home runs?
Yeah, I talking about those 5 strikeouts, I think I remember all 5 from that junior year of college. It definitely, it stings a lot when you strike out as a hitter, but then on top of that, when you're known for not striking out, I think it kind of hurts a little bit more, to me. But you can't let that affect your next at
Yeah.
bat. If you strike out at the first at bat of the game, you still got 3-4 more at bats. So I try to let it go as quick as possible. But for some time, it definitely does sting. But I try to throw it away real quick.
And I would imagine like when that happens, I have all the videos up in front of me. Like you strike out against Texas State, and I imagine the entire opposing dugout is just hooting and hollering as you're walking back to the dugout, right? It's like a little bit louder.
I remember some dugouts to get pretty loud when I struck out. I was just like, oh well, you just gotta tip your cap. Pitchers make good pitches, so tip your cap and try to get him next at bat.
Bro, they don't boo nobodies,
I'm curious because you're still striking out at a rate lower than almost anyone else in the major leagues, but of course it's more than 5. As those pitchers, of course, you're still having plenty of success, but this feels a little unfair to stick on the strikeouts here. But I'm curious your perspective because it happens so infrequently. I'm curious, like at this level, when you're in college, sometimes you might get rung up on a bad pitch. Maybe you swing and miss here and there, but for the most part, a lot of your strikeouts might be having to do with some umpiring more. Whereas in the big leagues, you're going to have situations where, as you just said, like a good pitch is a good pitch. At the highest level, what are the good pitches that are so much better than you've really ever seen before? Again, clearly you're still having a lot of success, but what are some of the pitches that you've seen at the major league level that are just like different? I know you just faced Tarek Skubal. That's a good example, but who are some pitches or specific kinds of pitches that stand out at the highest level?
Yeah, I think kind of all of them in a sense. Every pitcher kind of has their go-to pitch that they have, whether they have a really good vert fastball or they have a really good slider that breaks later, a changeup, whatever it may be. But I think the main thing kind of in the big leagues is that pitchers will make their pitches look like strikes longer, and then at the last second they'll end up being balls. So I think that's kind of the hardest thing you have to learn when you first get here is just looking for these pitches. I think they tunnel them very well. In the minor leagues, balls usually you can see balls out of the hand, and here they'll throw pitches that look like a slider down away for a strike, and then they'll break off 3 feet. And it's just a good pitch. Yesterday we faced Skubal, and you kind of go out there, you're like, all right, you just gotta battle this guy. Try to foul off his best pitches and wait for something in the zone. And like you said, he's kind of been unbelievable these past 2 years, and it's definitely a tough at bat for sure. But like I said, you just go up there and you really just try to battle him off. I think yesterday I swung at a changeup that I almost bounced, and I somehow just barely nicked it. And you kind of just like, all right, got lucky there. You gotta lock in more against those guys, especially when you go up against those Cy Young winners.
And I think that's something fans don't totally understand all the time is like so much of pitching in the big leagues is making balls look like strikes and making strikes look like balls. Like you had I think it was against Zach Wheeler, right? You had like that front hip slider that looked like a ball for 25 minutes until the very last second.
And it comes
right?
in, last second. And so like those are the pitches that it's hard to lay off. There's the ones that look like balls forever and then look like strikes, and the ones that look like strikes forever and end up being balls.
So then, like, for you, someone who's swinging more often than a lot of players, what would you define as a good pitch to hit?
Yeah, I think, honestly, for me, I just go up there and I just kind of look for a strike in the heart of the zone. I know that with me, I don't have the power to, hit a homer right or hit a homer center. Like, for me, it's looking for something I could drive left center and over down the left field line. So, a good pitch for me would be just be going up there looking for something in the heart of the zone and just being on time to hit it. And, these guys don't make mistakes too often, but you definitely, everybody's human. So you just got to look for those mistakes that they leave in the middle of the plate here and there.
And I think it's clear you understand your strengths. And it is interesting because, I've had conversations with guys like Stephen Kwan about this, where, having this ability to put the bat on the ball is, of course, a gift, but sometimes it kind of puts you in positions where maybe you might get yourself out because you're able to put the bat on balls that maybe you aren't necessarily going to. So how have you kind of struck that balance so far? As I said many times, like, you're clearly having success, but what has that kind of challenge been like when you can make contact with more pitches than maybe you should be?
Yeah, no, it is definitely, that is something that, as a contact hitter, you got to learn to do. These pitches that, you'll swing at a ball that's like down and away that you'll hit off the end of the bat to the first baseman, and you're like, or the pitcher, and you're like, man, if I just would have swung and missed there, then I could have an extra couple pitches to go up there and really just having at bat. So for me, it's starting to learn that it's okay to swing and miss, in certain situations, and just not being able to, a 2-0 count, if they throw a slider and you swing and miss by 4 feet, like, so what? At least you didn't hit off the end of the bat to the first baseman or chop it back to the pitcher. It's okay to swing and miss in certain spots, and then obviously the 2 strikes, kind of just fouling everything off and just waiting for a pitch to put in play. But no, like you said, I think we just played against Steven last week, and he goes up there and he hits everything, and it's super impressive to kind of be on the other side of the field and watch it. And he's just obviously a great hitter and a contact guy, like you said, and that's definitely something as a contact hitter, you gotta be able to lay off those pitches that are out of the zone and not kind of hit them softly and play.
Right, but at the same time, I imagine you don't want to lose that aggression that makes you special and be a player you're not. I want to ask you quickly about your dad. Obviously, you grew up around the game and you were in the big league world at an age that a lot of people weren't. But what's been maybe surprising or different than you expected about actually living the life that I'm sure you dreamed of for a very long time?
Yeah, no, I definitely I had the privilege of being able to watch my dad for the first 10 years of my life, and just kind of living in a baseball stadium, in clubhouses growing up. So as a fan, it's definitely a lot different than as a player. As a fan, you kind of look around, you see the big stadium, the big lights, and obviously the big crowds, and then it's that's something I always thought like you would recognize as a player. Then when I first started playing in the big leagues last year, and then going into this year, like obviously it's awesome to play in front of these crowds, but you really don't kind of recognize it too much because you're so focused on the game. Like you're so focused and locked in on each and every pitch, where it's like you don't really see the whole environment that you do as a fan, in the stands. So I think that main difference is just go out there. It's still baseball. It's just like playing back in college baseball. It's the same, obviously the same dimensions. It's the same game, obviously just a little bit more difficult. But that it is cool sometimes to look out there like right now and you're in a big league stadium. But like once it's game time, you're locked in every pitch and you don't really recognize too much of it.
So let's finish with something a little more timely. We have the All-Star Game coming up. You have been leading in the voting, which is astounding and well-deserved. But again, coming into the season, if I said, yeah, you're going to have more votes than Bobby Witt Jr., I think you might be a little bit surprised by that. But, your dad was an All-Star back in 2004. If you do get that opportunity, what are you looking forward to about that?
Yeah, no, it's obviously, a blessing for me for sure to be able to go out there and obviously just play the game in general. Something that I've always wanted to do is go out there and play this game. And, just be able to, have the privilege of being able to, meet all these shortstops that I've been able to play against. Like I played against Bobby Witt, played against Jeremy Pena, Bo Bichette, like all these guys that, JP Crawford in Seattle, all these guys you play shortstop against, and you get to talk to them and you get to kind of pick their brains. And, it's all been super cool conversations. Something that's crazy for me, being a young guy. I've been watching Bobby Witt since high school, and just being able to now play against him in the big leagues and talk to him, it's super awesome. For me to, be able to meet him and be able to play on the same field as him. But it's been great so far. I try not to think about it coming up, and just going out there every day and just enjoying this game with my teammates. Being able to put on a big league jersey every day and take the field with my team here has been awesome for me. I've enjoyed every bit of it. I love this team, love being a part of it, and just going out there every day and just playing the game I love.
Jacob, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate the time. We hope to see you in Atlanta, and keep making contact, baby. Hate those strikeouts. So much.
Thank you guys. I appreciate you having me on.
Welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. Thank you again to Jacob Wilson for joining us earlier. And reminder to keep voting for Jacob Wilson now that Phase 2 has begun. He will need to rack up more votes than Bobby Witt Jr. again, as those are the 2 finalists for the AL shortstop position. And Jacob Wilson deserves it. So while I expect both of them to be at the All-Star Game deservingly, it would be quite the story and well-deserved if Mr. Wilson is starting at shortstop for the American League in the All-Star Game in Atlanta. Be sure to follow Jacob on Instagram at Jacob Wilson as well. All right, Jake, before we get to the good, the bad, the ugla, let's go around the league. So we have a few bits of news that we want to get to before we have some fun at the end of this Friday show. And the first is a pretty big one. This, of course, involves Rays shortstop Wander Franco, who will likely never be playing shortstop for the Rays ever again. This is a story that is almost 2 years kind of in the making since this incredibly disturbing news regarding Franco came out in August of 2023, which is that he had a sexual relationship with a minor in the Dominican Republic in December of 2022. And this whole story has, of course, now become a trial and a court case in the Dominican. And we have an official verdict, which is that he has received a suspended 2-year prison sentence. And while the prosecutors were trying to seek a 5-year prison sentence, this is where the court landed in the DR. Now, it is also worth noting that the mother of the girl involved in this situation was convicted of sexually trafficking her daughter and sentenced to 10 years in prison after prosecutors proved she sought financial gains from Franco and laundered money. So this has, of course, been, as we've gotten details about the story over the last 2 years, just an incredibly harrowing and upsetting situation, and obviously disappointing and disgusting for a player who we thought was going to be a very relevant part of the Major League Baseball story over this next decade. And we were pretty much waiting to see what the verdict was going to be at home in the DR for Wander. And this seems to be where we landed. And I know a lot of people are looking at this saying, how does he not get more? And we're not going to comment on the veracity and how the legal system works in the DR. What is very clear here, based on the verdict, is this was an incredibly sad story that involved more than just Wander, and that doesn't obviously move him out, remove any blame for what happened with him. But it is a really, really upsetting situation, and I'm glad we have some sort of conclusion here. And as it relates to Major League Baseball, he remains on the restricted list. And when you're on the restricted list, you are not able to be paid. And the one interesting thing that still hasn't happened yet here is that MLB is still investigating the situation individually from their own perspective, based on their own policy involving situations like this, which means that Wander can still, and will in all likelihood still, be suspended by Major League Baseball in a very severe way, at which point it will really become clear when and if there is any remote chance of him ever playing Major League Baseball ever again.
And I think even so, he's going to get a significant suspension from MLB. I would just speculate there's a small chance they just flat out say, you're done. Now, whether or not that happens is somewhat irrelevant because he has a sex crimes conviction against a minor in the Dominican. The odds of him being granted a work visa in the United States, which he needs to play Major League Baseball, that is extremely unlikely at this point, right? And so even if he serves his time, the suspended sentence, that he's still probably never going to play Major League Baseball again. Which is there was a world in which he was deemed innocent, or the verdict fell a different way, where there was a path back to him. Whether that's appropriate or not is a different conversation. I don't want this guy in a baseball stadium ever again for obvious reasons. Where there was a path back to that. And I think yesterday, one of the things we learned is that is now extremely unlikely. So this entire story, obviously very disturbing and very disappointing, like you said, for a player who we thought was going to be the face of the game for the next decade plus. But we have a conclusion now, and we can kind of, take Wander, crumple him up, and throw him into the dustbin of baseball evil. Jordan, any other things from around the league that you want to chat about?
Yeah, so let's go back to another player that I guess we just mentioned earlier, which is Witt Jr. Witt Jr. is going to play for Team USA. Now, he did last time, but the last time in 2023, this is before Witt Jr. was one of the best players in baseball. He was ascending in that direction, but now he joins Aaron Judge and Paul Skeens as the ultimate NBA street team for Team USA. Now, again, as they roll out
the count. That's good. We're good. We'll roll with these three.
Can we just play with these three? Is that enough? Yeah. So obviously, they are slowly rolling this out. This one is hardly a surprise. Great. awesome. I'm glad Bobby Witt Jr. is playing. I am now genuinely curious if Jacob Wilson will also be getting the invite, if he is going to be on the team, whether he would start over Bobby Witt Jr. Either way, because I have to imagine Mark DeRosa would love to have someone like Jacob Wilson on the team. But either way, this is good. More star players playing, the better. As we said when we talked about Skeens, what matters is who's pitching, and we are so far away from knowing who is going to be pitching that this is a wonderful addition, and not surprising. And so I'm looking forward to the next inclusion that surprises me. Maybe is the way to react to this. So yeah,
Shohei Ohtani playing for Team USA. There's a surprise.
Yeah, that would certainly shock me. Let's stay on the shortstops, Jake. Jeremy Pena has hired Scott Boras to be his agent. There was some reporting from Chandler Rome of The Athletic and those around. I believe Ari Alexander had some stuff about the Astros and Jeremy Pena trying to kind of hammer out an extension, or at least talking about it. And at some point during those discussions, Jeremy Pena was like, 1 second, I just need to make a phone call. Oh, guys, bad news. I hired Scott Boras. So that doesn't mean an extension is dead, because as we know, Jose Altuve, Scott Boras' client, extended with the Houston Astros. I believe Lance McCullers as well. So it is possible, and maybe this is Jeremy Pena saying, I just want to get the most money in an extension. And honestly, I haven't seen the reporting which agency he left, so forgive me for excluding that detail. But of course, what matters here is that Jeremy Pena has hired Scott Boras, which, if an extension does not get done, now we can look forward to Jeremy Pena maybe being one of the best free agents on the market after 2027, which is still a long time from now. But if he can repeat the season he's having right now a few more times, he's going to make himself a good chunk of money.
Pena was with Ballingy. It is not uncommon for players to jump to Boras. We've seen this before. I believe it happened with Bregman. It happened with Pete Alonso. It usually means that free agency is coming for a particular player. More extension talk. The Twins extend Rocco Baldelli not to play baseball, but to tell other people to. This is somewhat unfortunate considering the Twins are playing so poorly. I don't think that Rocco Baldelli is the problem over there. I really like Rocco. I think he's a good manager. The reason that teams do this is just to remove the conversation. So by extending Rocco, they are paying to have Rocco feel like he's going to be there for a while, and for reporters to stop asking if Rocco's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, it is worth noting, Dan Hayes reported about this at The Athletic. It's unclear exactly with managers and with front office. It's not like with players where you get the press release and say, I mean, sometimes you do, but for the most part, these kinds of agreements can happen kind of behind the scenes, and then it gets reported after the fact. So when exactly the Twins decided to exercise this option over the past couple of months is not entirely clear. Maybe it happened after they won 13 in a row and not when they were losing basically every other day. But to your point, like, people are asking, okay, Rocco Baldelli, is he someone that's going to be on the hot seat after another, or during maybe another disappointing season for the Twins? This is one way to sort of remove that conversation, although I don't think that the average fan really cares about the contractual situation. If they're mad at the manager, they're mad at the manager. But, I agree with you about Rocco. I think Rocco's awesome, and I am curious what direction this Twins season continues to go. They bounced back a little bit after a first couple tough days against Seattle this week, but they remain in the middle. And in this messy AL, I still have not really seen enough from them to believe they are a legitimate factor.
Totally agree. Two more notes. The Chicago White Sox signed Noah Syndergaard. What year is it?
Yeah. No, it's 2025. And Jake, do you know how old Noah Syndergaard is?
34?
He turns 33 in August, so he is still just 32 years old, but it has been almost 2 years since he last pitched in the major leagues. He did not pitch anywhere last year, at least not in an official capacity. And yeah, I mean, the last time he saw him, he was really, really terrible for the Dodgers and for the Guardians. And the White Sox are, of course, the kind of team that would give him a shot. I don't know if this says we are about to trade pitchers and we're going to need innings. I guess that would make some sense, but a lot of their pitchers right now are pretty young. It's not like they're going to trade Shane Smith. So I don't really know what this means exactly, but the point is Noah Syndergaard is going to keep trying to pitch, and if he can succeed, that's great. But all the recent evidence suggests that this is not going to go especially well. But he is a big name, and that is why we were mentioning it on our baseball podcast.
He should use steroids. Like, take your steroids, get back out there, see if you get caught, and if you do, like, you're done anyway. You know?
Wow. Just incredible life advice from Jake Mintz here on a Friday morning.
For all the kids listening, for all the kids listening, for all the kids listening, when things get tough, take steroids. I'm kidding. Don't do that.
It's a joke.
They're bad for you.
It's a joke, friends.
It's a joke.
It's
a joke. It's a joke. I'm joking. Jordan can attest to it. He took tons of steroids, and it didn't end up well for him. That's why he's not a big leaguer. Griffin Canning didn't do steroids. Sorry, Griffin Canning, you're a nice guy and probably going through a tough time right now. I didn't mean to drag you into the PED conversation, but I did. Really sad looking injury yesterday for Griffin Canning, who, while planting on what looked to be a routine batted ball, had to be carried off the field, not under really his own power due to a left ankle injury. It certainly smells like an Achilles thing. We are not doctors, except for when we tell children to take steroids. He's going to undergo imaging. He could not put weight on it. It does not seem like he's going to pitch for a while. And that sucks because he's having a sensational bounce back season. He's kind of the major guinea pig for the Mets Magic pitching development group. And Griffin is a good dude. Like talking to him whenever I'm around the Mets. And it's a bummer. This comes at a time where the Mets are getting Frankie Montas back. Sean Manaea was to still come back next week. He had a sort of a minor setback in his return, but he will be back. So, obviously not good. The Mets do have some arms coming back to weather this. Still, you can never have enough starting pitching.
Well said, sir. All right, let's do it. It's Friday. It's time for the good, the bad, the ugly.
My good is Witt Merrifield, who has hung up the spikes after a very impressive 9-year career. Feels like he was around longer than that. I'm kind of surprised he didn't stick it out to get to 10 years, which is the time that everybody wants. 3-time All-Star, finishes with 1,249 hits. Jordan, career WAR for Witt, guess? Any thoughts?
15?
17.9. What I loved about his retirement announcement, I'm just going to read this. I was so privileged and blessed in the cities I played in. KC, you became a second home to my family and I. Nothing compares to a first love. Toronto, playing for an entire country, was an honor I'll never forget. An honor with a U. He threw the U in honor. That is attention to detail. Philly, I liked you way more than you liked me. Sorry I stunk for you. In Atlanta, it was the joy of a lifetime to play and end my career for my childhood team. My only baseball regret was never being able to bring a world championship to any one of the cities I played for. I loved all the moments, all the highs, and even all the lows. Kudos to you, Witt. I was around the Witt Merrifield era Phillies, and they loved that guy in the room and hated that guy in the stands. And that is simply because he sucked on the field, and that is okay. Jordan, Witt Merrifield, since retiring on Wednesday, has already announced that he is coming into our lane with a podcast.
Oh my gosh. What? We're all right. We better step it up now that we're competing with Witt. And especially, like, again, when I think about Witt Merrifield, of course he's on those Royals teams when they're not very good, but he posts, right? He played, I think, at some point 350 games in a row from, I believe, 18 to 21. It was probably might have even been more than that. So yeah, I'm worried. Is he going to be doing like multiple podcasts a day? Like, is he just going to be racking up the playing time here in our space?
6-inning stretch. A baseball podcast hosted by 3-time All-Star Witt Merrifield and sports reporter Lindsey Dunn. Every Wednesday, Witt and Lindsey will talk about the Blue Jays, the latest news around Major League Baseball, and interview some of the biggest names in the game. All right. Well, Wait, you don't see
Cool.
me rolling over there and taking ground balls. Okay, so we'll see if you can do
What do
this.
you mean? He saw you in the media game, and he was getting nervous. I will say the last thing about Witt is like he literally hit a walk-off single to win the College World Series in 2010 in the bottom of the 11th, the 2010 College World Series Game 2, and that's why that last sentence of his kind of retirement announcement kind of hits, because he was like, "I'm a winner. I literally won the World Series with a walk-off hit. Surely I will win a World Series at some point." And the reality was he was not on that many good teams. And that wasn't his fault by any stretch, but he did not necessarily have that opportunity. But still a great career, and we will see how good of a podcaster he is. From Whit Merrifield to someone who will not need
Great
to podcast anytime soon.
Well, great player, but an even better podcaster. Doubt it.
That's what they say. Let's talk about Jacob Misiorowski, who was marvelous once again in his third major league start, as he is better than Paul Skeens. Maybe not quite yet, but he was this week, as he earns his third win in 3 starts. Paul Skeens still only has 4 wins this season. Now, that has more to do with the Pirates than it does Paul Skeens, but it is pretty remarkable how quickly Jacob Misiorowski has ascended to, like, oh yeah, it's Jacob Misiorowski. You got to tune in and watch. But when you've allowed 3 hits in 16 innings and struck out 19, and you're throwing 100 miles an hour, and you're getting down the mound farther than basically anyone else in the league except for like Tyler Glasnow and Alexis Diaz, when you're throwing this hard, you don't necessarily need that extreme extension, how far down the mound you get before you release the ball to be that effective. And yet he also has that and is also throwing 101, 102. He is a special arm, and it has just kind of changed the complexion of this Brewers team in a lot of ways. And I know he's only going to make so many starts this year, but I am already looking forward to the next time Jacob Misiorowski takes the ball.
My bad is what happened with Ketel Marte at guaranteed rate. I guess it's just the rate field in Chicago. We saw Marte crying on the field during the game, being consoled by Torey Lovello, Diamondbacks manager, and everyone was like, what the hell is going on? Someone speculated incorrectly. It was like, oh, Ildemaro Vargas just broke his foot like earlier in the day. Maybe he's emotional about that. That was not the case. Turns out a fan was yelling things at Marte about his mother, who passed away in a car accident in 2017. The fan, after the initial horrible thing that was said, everyone handled this well. The White Sox security got this dude out of there. MLB banned him indefinitely. The Diamondbacks teammates supported him. The White Sox threw something up on the big board. That's all good. Big league players live fortunate, blessed, privileged lives. They are also at times made to feel a little bit like zoo animals, and fans are too emboldened to be able to yell anything that they want at these human beings. These are human beings. Good rule. Here's just a good rule. Don't say anything about anyone's mom unless it's, hey, dude, your mom's great. Or like, hey, I ran into your mom at Shull. Or how's everything going with your mom? Right? Just don't do that to a stranger. This is not even a baseball conversation to me. It's one of humanity. And it is not a one-off incident. I think that fan vitriol has ramped up in the age of sports gambling, where fans feel like they have a level of entitlement to these people and express their anger in a really irresponsible way. That is bad. It is all bad. Don't do it. Just be nice to people and don't talk about their moms.
Yeah, and I mean, the point you just made, whether or not that was related to this Marte situation or not, yeah, we've seen already so many stories written about stuff that's being sent to people and their family members related to gambling because people can't. You use the word entitlement. It's more that, again, it is inextricably linking. This is what happens when you have this so close to the sport, is you have people that are in bad places that then feel like their personal lives are being impacted, of course, of their own decision, by the results of these sporting events. Yeah. And that is a troubling trend that unfortunately will remain relevant as we move forward in this modern space. And I don't look forward to talking about it again, but we probably will, because that's kind of the society that we're working with right now. So I agree. That is very bad. My bad this week, I'm going to bring it back onto the field, is the Reds DFAing Jeimer Candelario. And this was bad because Jeimer Candelario has been really bad. And this was a free agent signing that was a little perplexing at the time, but you also sort of saw it considering where the Reds were at the time. Is like, all right, let's get a veteran player in here where we feel like we know what we're going to get. We have a lot of young players and we're moving forward. And, there's going to be some variance with these young guys. But Jeimer Candelario, I mean, he's a vet. He's hit for a long time. He's a good clubhouse guy. At the very least, he'll just be a solid hitter and will play a few positions, and that'll be that. And instead, he has been one of the worst players in baseball since the moment he signed this 3-year, $45 million contract. And my bad, more expansive, is just the fact that the Reds have somehow had a few of like the worst free agent signings of the last 10 years. And I know that free agency is a difficult thing for teams to execute effectively, consistently. And it is totally reasonable to point out and be like, hey, well, what about all these other free agents who suck this year, who are making way more money than Jeimer Candelario? That is all true. But when you're the Reds and you are only going to spend so much, you literally cannot afford to miss on Jeimer Candelario or Mike Moustakas or Shogo Akiyama. Guys over the last 5 years who they signed, gave real money to, and who were literally, I mean, even Will Myers on a 1-year deal, immediately becoming one of the worst players in baseball. This is bad. To miss this badly this many times on free agents is troubling. I know the Reds are still in the mix here because those young players are performing, but like, yikes. This is a very, very messy combination of signings when you cannot afford to have this, to miss this badly so many times. So again, yeah, there are other free agents that have not worked out for other teams, but in a lot of cases, those other teams have a lot more money and a lot more good players. And it's disappointing for Candelario. I don't know if that means it's the end of his major league career, but it's about as bad as it can go for a free agent signing.
Definitely going to be on the Braves. Just smells like a classic Braves mid-season pickup. Good for the Reds for spending money. You got to be able to hit when you do decide to do it and you're a smaller market team. That's just the reality of the sport. My Uggla this week was Jose Trevino's week against his former club. The Yankees were in town in Cincinnati. Trevi was dealt there over the winter, and it started. Everything was happy. He was using his old teammates' walk-up songs as his own walk-up song. Like, he used the Pop Smoke song that Judge uses, and Judge like waved at him while he was walking up to the plate. Then he used Rooster by Alice in Chains, which is Carlos Rodon's walk-up song, on his way to face Carlos Rodon, which is actually a sneaky competitive advantage of like putting the guy out of his zone a little bit. And Carlos is like, no way, what are you doing? And that's great. But then Trevino gets on everybody's bad side when he kind of rats out Jazz Chisholm to the umpire, potentially resulting in Chisholm getting ejected. And Aaron Boone was asked about this, and he was like, I'm kind of low on Trevi right now after he played a role in getting Jazz tossed. Quote, there's a pretty strong case that Jazz should not have been ejected from last night's game. Like, this is super weird for this to happen. I would say that it's a great example of the type of thing where, like, if Trevino was still on the Yankees and he got a player on another team ejected, everyone on the Yankees secretly would be like, sneaky move, like, attaboy, way to be, good job. Like, that's just helping us win ball games. But when you do it for another team, that's Bush League. Like, I'm down on this guy right now. Very silly. Baseball is silly. And this is a very silly situation.
Yeah, no, this is certainly Uggla. And I don't know, maybe, especially when you're a catcher, maybe, you got some of these relationships with these umps. Maybe Trevino and Mark Wegner are like, he's like, yo, your guy's still pissed at you about that strike three. What's going on here? Like, we got to take a look at Jazz over there. So yeah, he might be right. I mean, I think Aaron Boone might be honest. Like, some of the video is certainly compelling, and of course, not how umpires should be reacting to anything is being kind of goaded into ejecting other players. But I agree. This was a funny to have both of these things happen in the same series was very, very, very ugly. And that is why you are talking about it. All right. The grand finale.
Woo!
Some people may have seen this news. And oh boy, any excuse we have to talk about Mr. Yoenis Cespedes is a good one, especially long past his major league career. Folks, the ranch is on the market. Yoenis Cespedes is selling his massive, massive estate not far from the Mets spring training complex in Port St. Lucie, Florida.
Estate, it's the size of a state.
378 acres. This is on the market for $30 million. The house itself is 6 bedrooms, 15,000 square feet. Again, just all these numbers and specs, having just bought a more modest home, are very funny to me. And obviously, like, the ranch has been a big part of Yo's kind of personality since he joined the Mets. Now, I think what is most interesting to me about this, other than all of it, because we are interested in everything involving this individual, is that the ranch is known as La Potencia 2, right? So La Potencia, the power, that is his nickname, of course, going back to his days in Cuba. But 2, now maybe it's the second or dos, I don't know how you what they want to call it, but it does imply that there was a first one. And I think that this is important because my understanding is that this property was built in 2018. And there is a video that Vice Sports did in March of 2017. You can find on YouTube that's titled Yoenis Cespedes' Life on the Ranch. And I think must be the La Potencia 1. Now, I don't know if it was called that at the time, but now that ranch, and you can see it in the video, does seem to be a little bit more humble. But this one is anything but.
Nothing
humble.
Why
would it be when you've made that much money and hit that many home runs and are one of the coolest players of a generation? So I do not know why he is selling this. I hope all is well with Yo. I assume, he seems to have a pretty good life down there in Florida. As we would like to remind people, he is essentially the owner of Chandler Bats, which is one of the most successful bat companies, one of the most prominent bat manufacturers in Major League Baseball. You'll see some of the biggest players in the league, including Judge, including Ohtani, swing Chandler Bats. He basically purchased Chandler in 2019 and is now essentially the operating face of it. So hopefully business is still booming, and this is just a decision about real estate, and maybe he's downsizing. Maybe honestly, I think the funniest outcome here is that this isn't big enough for Yo, and he actually needs more room for his horses and more room for his family to come hang out. So again, we don't have any background here, but if you have $30 million lying around and would like to buy this for us to go hang out at when we're in Florida, let us know.
Okay, couple of things. One, your life is pretty set now in Ohio. I'm moving to DC. Mm-hmm. If we were given this house, would we move? Like, would we move our lives and our wives down to Florida to live in Yo's house?
No, but it would definitely change our spring training planning for sure. I think it would be way more likely that I would be spending some time in Florida instead of Arizona. So I think that would be, but no, I don't think I don't need all this space or stable for.
So I want to read I want to read the description here. Okay. This is on Corcoran.com. This home is being sold by Julian Johnston, who's the broker. If you're interested, his phone number's on the website. I'm not going to read it on here, but it is available. We will not be calling. About this home. La Potencia 2, or dos, this is a typo. La Potencia 2, the awe-inspiring lifestyle, equestrian, and hunting estate built in 2018 on near 378 acres in Port St. Lucie. Former Mets baseball star Cespedes built this 15,000 square foot home with amenity buildings. Total area is 31,000 square feet, featuring 6 bedrooms, 4-bath, 2 half-baths, soaring volume ceilings, a gourmet kitchen with cooking island, and expansive entertaining areas. Outdoors, a 40 by 20 heated pool, spa, screen patio, lush grounds create a private resort-style oasis. This modern home will keep you entertained all year long with baseball batting cage, game processing room, stable for 12 horses, office, horse training yards, hundreds of acre to ride your horses or go hunting for wild boar and other game. This property is near spring training baseball grounds. Who says no, man? I mean, office? It has office.
It is really funny to me that it lists the stable for the 12 horses, pauses and tells you that there's an office, and then tells you there's also horse training yards and hundreds of acres to ride your horses. Listen, we could talk about this all day. Also, in-unit washer dryer, we love that. So great. That's obviously all anyone cares about. Yeah, they do have probably more. I would imagine there's
just
maybe
one?
more than one washer and more than one dryer for the number of people that are probably staying here at once. All of which
there's
is to say,
also
I hope Yo finds a buyer.
Outrageous statue of a horse right in the main entryway. I highly recommend people just scroll through this. The pictures of the closets are incredible. The amount of full white on white outfits that Yoenis seems to have in his closet, in his walk-in, is just stupendous. Yeah. I'm looking for a place, and I don't think this is the one.
Okay. All right. Well, you can contact Julian Johnston about it. This also is a good reminder as we wrap up the show here. Thank you to everyone who emailed us about construction. We had a great conversation on Wednesday about the A's Vegas Stadium construction timeline. And this is truly my favorite thing about doing this job. Like, this is a true statement.
I totally agree.
When we can talk about something like this and then hear from people who truly work for construction companies are like, oh, I'm so glad you're talking about construction so that I can educate you on buttresses and whatnot. Like, so great. So maybe we'll talk about that more. I mean, we certainly will leading up to 2028, but thank you so much for those emails and keep those coming if you have more construction background. And if you're like an architecture expert or real estate expert, I would love your take on this listing for Yo's house. That would also be really interesting to know. And
how much money do Jake and Jordan need to put down?
I'm telling you right now, man, it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. But anyway, thank you.
I know what I make. And I know that it's the exact same thing that you make, and I don't think that together.
Not gonna.
I don't know what your wife makes.
No,
so
that's true. That's true. That is a different factor, but I know that it's not something that she wants to put towards a ranch in Florida. Thank you all for listening. We got a wonderful weekend of baseball ahead of us. We've got the NHL draft tonight. Let's go Sabres. Roger McQueen, welcome to Buffalo. Maybe, I don't know. There are some
big
fun
trade
series
for the
this
Birds.
Weekend, of course. We got, big trade. JJ Peterka. I still don't know how to feel about that. Am I pronouncing that name correctly? I don't know. Phillies Braves this weekend. We got Mariners Rangers. Cubs Astros is pretty juicy. Dodgers Royals. Boy, do the Royals stink right now. Padres Reds. Cardinals Guardians. I might check that out tomorrow. We will see. But thank you all for listening to this Friday edition of Baseball Barbecast. Thank you to Jacob Wilson for joining us. Go vote for Jacob Wilson for the All-Star Game. He deserves it. Thank you to Andrew Hartz, TJ Brassel for producing. And we will talk to you all next week. Bye-bye.